The community center buzzed with excitement. Familiar faces filled the room, women who had once felt invisible, now standing tall with confidence. Soft murmurs of anticipation mixed with the clinking of coffee cups and rustling of program papers. When she stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. Her journey wasn't just a personal story anymore, it had become a movement. Years of struggle, determination, and unwavering hope had transformed her from a struggling single parent to a beacon of inspiration. The local business award was more than just a piece of metal. It represented every sleepless night spent working, every moment of doubt overcome, every sacrifice made to create something meaningful. Her daughter sat in the front row, eyes sparkling with pride, understanding now that dreams aren't just fairy tales, they're built with hard work and resilience. Looking out at the audience, she saw reflections of her past self. Young mothers, struggling professionals, individuals who had been told they weren't enough. But tonight was different. Tonight was about proving that limitations are often just illusions we create for ourselves. Her speech wasn't polished or rehearsed. It was raw, real, and completely authentic. She spoke about the nights spent in a car, the moments of absolute desperation, the times when giving up seemed like the easiest option. But she also spoke about hope, that tiny spark that refuses to be extinguished, no matter how dark the circumstances. The design studio had grown into something far beyond her initial dreams. What started as a survival strategy had become a lifeline for an entire community. Women who once felt trapped were now running their own businesses, supporting their families, breaking generational cycles of struggle. Journalists scribbled notes, capturing every word. But the real story wasn't in the headlines, it was in the faces of the women in the audience. Each of them saw a piece of their own journey in her story. Hope isn't something you find, it's something you create, one small step at a time. Her daughter, now a teenager, understood the power of resilience better than most. She had grown up watching her mother transform pain into purpose, struggle into strength. The young girl had learned that family isn't about perfection, but about fighting together, supporting each other through the toughest storms. The awards ceremony continued, but it felt different from typical corporate events. This was a celebration of human spirit, of overcoming impossible odds. Each person in the room carried a story of transformation, of breaking through barriers that seemed insurmountable. Local business leaders spoke about her impact. Government officials recognized the community program's success. But for her, the real validation came from the women who approached her after the ceremony. Tearful hugs, whispered thanks, stories of hope rekindled. "You showed me I could be more," one woman said, her voice breaking. "When everyone else gave up on me, you believed I could rebuild my life." These moments were worth more than any award. The ripple effect of her journey had touched countless lives, proving that one person's determination could create massive change. The design studio had become more than a business. It was a sanctuary for dreams, a place where broken spirits found healing, where potential was nurtured, and where hope was always in abundant supply. Young professionals mentored newcomers, creating a continuous cycle of support and growth. As the evening wound down, she looked at her daughter. Their journey from sleeping in a car to this moment seemed like an impossible dream. But here they were, not just surviving, but truly thriving. The little girl who once represented everything to lose had become a symbol of everything that could be gained. The local news would call her a success story. Motivational speakers might use her journey as an example, but to the women in her community, she was something more. A friend, a mentor, a living proof that circumstances do not define destiny. Her story wasn't about becoming rich or famous. It was about finding purpose, creating opportunities, and lifting others as she climbed. Every challenge had been a lesson, every struggle a stepping stone. As they drove home that night, the city lights reflecting in the car window, she knew their journey was far from over. There would be more challenges, more obstacles, but they would face them together, with the same spirit that had carried them through their darkest days. Hope, she had learned, is the most powerful business strategy. And love, pure, unconditional love, is the most transformative force in the world. The small design studio was more than just a workspace. It was a lifeline. A beacon of hope for women who had almost given up. Every corner of the room told a story of resilience, with motivational quotes hanging alongside design portfolios and children's artwork. Our protagonist knew exactly what it felt like to be stuck, to feel like the world had turned its back. Those memories fueled her passion to create something different. She wasn't just running a business, she was building a community of survivors. Each week, she hosted workshops that were part skill building, part therapy. Women would arrive looking tired, beaten down by life's challenges, but they'd leave with something precious: belief in themselves. Some came with toddlers in tow, others juggled multiple part-time jobs, but they all shared one thing: an unbreakable spirit. The program wasn't just about teaching design skills. It was about rebuilding confidence, one small victory at a time. She'd share her own journey openly: the nights spent in a car, the moments of doubt, the times she almost gave up. Her vulnerability became their strength. Local business owners started taking notice. They began offering internships, small contracts to the women in the program. What started as a small initiative began transforming lives. Mothers who once felt trapped found themselves earning independent incomes, supporting their families with dignity. One afternoon, a young woman with tear-filled eyes shared how the program had changed everything for her. She'd escaped a difficult relationship, was supporting her 2 kids, and just landed her first professional design contract. The room erupted in applause, not just for her, but for every woman who had fought against impossible odds. The studio became more than a workplace. It was a sanctuary. Children played in a corner decorated with colorful mats and educational toys, while their mothers learned, worked, and dreamed. Lunch breaks turned into support group sessions, with women sharing resources, babysitting, and most importantly, hope. Local media picked up their story. Suddenly, what began as a small community initiative started attracting attention from national organizations. Funding opportunities emerged, allowing them to expand their support network. But for our protagonist, it was never about the recognition. It was about creating real, meaningful change. She remembered her own daughter watching her work, learning that challenges were just opportunities in disguise. Now, other children were witnessing their mothers transform their lives, breaking generational cycles of limitation. The workshops expanded. They now covered everything from basic design skills to financial literacy, from emotional wellness to professional networking. Each session was carefully crafted, drawing from personal experiences of struggle and triumph. Government agencies and nonprofit organizations started reaching out, wanting to understand their unique approach. How had they created such a powerful support system? The answer was simple: genuine understanding coupled with practical support. Not every story had a perfect ending. Some women struggled, some moved on, some found different paths. But each of them left knowing they were capable of more than they had ever imagined. The program wasn't about creating perfect success stories. It was about empowering real people with real challenges. As the years passed, the initiative grew beyond her wildest dreams. Women who had once been participants were now mentors, coaches, successful professionals in their own right. They'd return, not just to give back, but to remind themselves and others of how far they'd come. The small studio, once just a dream, had become a symbol of hope. A place where broken dreams were rebuilt, where struggle transformed into strength, where being a mother wasn't a limitation, but a source of incredible power. And through it all, her own daughter watched, learning that compassion, hard work, and believing in yourself could change not just one life, but entire communities. No one could have predicted how quickly everything would change when the pandemic hit. While traditional salons shut their doors and struggled to survive, her mobile business model suddenly became more valuable than ever. The phone rang constantly with calls from worried families seeking safe ways to care for their elderly relatives who were now completely isolated. She spent late nights researching safety protocols and early mornings sourcing protective equipment. Her living room became a staging area for organizing supplies, masks, face shields, gloves, and sanitizing equipment. Her children helped pack individual kits for each visit, carefully counting items and adding cheerful notes to brighten clients' days. The challenge wasn't just about keeping her business running. It was about protecting her vulnerable clients while meeting their essential needs. She developed new ways of working, like setting up temporary stations in backyard patios and screened porches. For clients in facilities, she coordinated with staff to arrange services in outdoor gardens when weather permitted. Her business evolved in ways she never expected. She started offering video consultations to family members who couldn't visit their loved ones, showing them how to help with basic grooming between professional visits. These virtual sessions often turned into emotional support meetings where concerned children and grandchildren could ask questions about their relatives' well-being. One particularly touching moment came when a client's grandson reached out from across the country. His grandmother, living alone, hadn't been able to do her hair for weeks and was feeling depressed. Through a video call, she guided him through a simple hair care routine he could help his grandmother with. The gratitude in his voice when his grandmother smiled at her reflection made all the late nights worth it. The experience sparked a new idea. She began creating simple tutorial videos specifically designed for family caregivers. Using her phone and basic editing apps, she demonstrated techniques for helping seniors with grooming tasks. The videos were nothing fancy, just practical advice filmed in her kitchen after the kids went to bed, but they filled a crucial need. As her online presence grew, she noticed more and more comments from other single parents asking how she'd built her business. Many were struggling with similar situations she'd faced years ago. The questions reminded her of those early days in the shelter, poring over business books in the computer lab. She started hosting weekly online meetups, sharing her experience and offering guidance to others trying to start their own mobile services. Looking at her growing team, now including 5 other single parents she trained, she realized something important. Each of them brought unique skills and perspectives to the work. One was particularly good with dementia patients, having cared for her own mother. Another had a knack for working with clients who had physical disabilities. Together, they could serve more people and serve them better. She invested in specialized training for her team, focusing on medical conditions that affected their elderly clients. They learned about working with clients who had Parkinson's disease, arthritis, or were recovering from strokes. Each new skill they acquired meant another group of people they could help maintain their dignity and independence. The local community college noticed her success and invited her to speak to their business students. Standing at the podium, she shared honest stories about building a business while homeless, about nights spent planning in a parked car, and about never giving up. The students' questions reminded her how far she'd come, but also how much she still wanted to achieve. Her children, now older and more involved in the business, started contributing their own ideas. Her daughter suggested creating care packages for their regular clients, filled with gentle hair products and easy-to-use tools. Her son developed a simple scheduling system that helped track client preferences and special needs. Their involvement made the business truly feel like a family legacy. As her business model proved successful, she began documenting everything: the systems she developed, the training methods, the safety protocols. She dreamed of helping other entrepreneurs replicate her success in different cities. Every procedure manual she wrote, every training video she recorded, was created with the hope of empowering others to build similar services in their own communities. Word spread through the senior community like wildfire. What started as a handful of clients in one assisted living facility grew into a network of recommendations across several neighborhoods. Every new client had a story, and each story led to another connection. The grandmother who loved her new haircut told her bridge club. A retired teacher shared photos with her Facebook group. A nurse at the rehabilitation center passed her card to families of patients. Her phone, once silent except for bill collectors, now buzzed constantly with appointment requests. She started keeping a proper calendar, color-coding visits by location to save on gas. The trunk of her car transformed into a mobile salon, organized with the precision of a surgical unit. Everything had its place: tools, products, even a small rechargeable fan for clients who got too warm. The shelter's business mentor helped her understand the importance of tracking everything. She logged miles driven, products used, and time spent with each client. At first, these details seemed overwhelming, but they painted a clear picture of her growing success. Every evening, after tucking her children into bed, she'd update her records, watching the numbers climb steadily upward. Her children noticed the changes too. There were new clothes for school, proper supplies instead of borrowed pencils, and even occasional treats like pizza on Friday nights. Her daughter started talking about becoming a business owner herself someday. Her son proudly told his friends that his mom was the boss of her own company. The most significant moment came when she realized she had enough saved for a security deposit on an apartment. It was a small two-bedroom unit in a modest complex, nothing fancy, but it represented everything they'd been working toward. The day they moved in, her children ran from room to room, amazed by the simple luxury of space. That night, they ate dinner at a real table, sitting on folding chairs, but it felt like dining at a five-star restaurant. Her business continued to evolve. She noticed that many clients struggled with more than just hair care. They needed help with makeup for special occasions, basic nail care they couldn't manage themselves, and even simple grooming tasks that arthritis made difficult. She took online courses in the evenings, earning certifications in senior care and special needs beauty services. Each new skill brought more clients and, more importantly, allowed her to provide better care. The turning point came when the director of a large assisted living facility asked to meet with her. They had been receiving so many requests from residents for her services that they wanted to discuss a regular arrangement. Sitting in that office in her carefully pressed business attire, she realized how far she'd come from those days of practicing hairstyles in the car mirror. The contract they offered would guarantee steady income, 2 days a week at their facility, with the freedom to continue serving her private clients the rest of the time. As she reviewed the paperwork, her hands steady now where they once would have trembled, she thought about all the late nights and early mornings that had led to this moment. Her reputation grew beyond just technical skills. Clients talked about her patience, her ability to listen, her way of making everyone feel special. One client's daughter wrote a touching review online about how she'd spent an hour helping her mother look perfect for her 60th wedding anniversary celebration. Another shared how she'd come on Christmas morning to help her aunt prepare for a family gathering. She started getting calls from other facilities, each wanting to set up similar arrangements. The demand became so high that she realized she needed help. The solution came from an unexpected place, another mother at the shelter where she'd once stayed. This woman had cosmetology experience, but had struggled to find work due to childcare issues. The flexible schedule of mobile beauty care proved perfect for her situation. Training her first employee was both exciting and terrifying. She created detailed guidelines, sharing not just techniques, but the little things she'd learned, like how to position a mirror for clients with limited mobility, or which topics made good conversation with someone experiencing memory loss. Her attention to these details had built her reputation, and she was determined to maintain that standard of care. The money she'd once counted in a stuffed rabbit now flowed through a proper business account. Each deposit represented not just income, but trust, from clients who welcomed her into their homes, from facilities that recommended her services, and from families who relied on her to help their loved ones feel dignified and cared for. Success wasn't just about the numbers anymore. It was about the community she'd built, one haircut at a time. The flyer caught her eye one rainy morning at the library. Women's shelter, emergency housing available, it read in bold letters. She'd passed similar notices before, always hesitating, pride and fear holding her back. But watching her children try to dry their socks under the hand dryer in the library bathroom, something finally broke inside her. That afternoon, she made the call. The shelter wasn't what she'd imagined. Instead of the cold, institutional space she'd feared, she found warm yellow walls and a small playground in the back. The staff didn't look at her with pity when she explained her situation. They listened, nodded, and then showed her family to a small but clean room with real beds, the first they'd slept in for months. That first night, lying in an actual bed, she couldn't sleep. The silence felt strange after months of parking lot noises. Her children slept deeply beside her, their breathing steady and peaceful. She pulled out her notebook, the pages now wrinkled from constant use, and started writing again. But this time, instead of just dreams, she began making concrete plans. The shelter offered more than just a roof. They had workshops on financial literacy, job skills, and, most importantly for her, small business development. The instructor, a retired business owner, took special interest in her mobile hair salon idea. "You're not just selling haircuts," she told her. "You're offering independence and dignity to people who need it. That's a real business." Together, they transformed her scattered notes into a proper business plan. She learned about profit margins, marketing strategies, and customer retention. The numbers were overwhelming at first, but she broke them down into smaller pieces, just like she did when teaching her daughter multiplication tables. Each small calculation brought her closer to understanding the bigger picture. The computer lab at the shelter became her second home. She spent hours researching local regulations for mobile beauty services, watching tutorials on business accounting, and creating simple flyers using free online tools. Her children would sit nearby, doing their homework or drawing pictures of what they imagined their future would look like. Their drawings always included a big house with a salon chair right in the living room. One of the shelter's social workers connected her with a small business association that offered microloans to women entrepreneurs. The application process was daunting, page after page of questions about business models, revenue projections, and risk assessments. She worked on it every night after putting her kids to bed, often falling asleep with the papers scattered across her lap. The day she presented her business plan to the loan committee was terrifying. She wore her best outfit, the one she kept for client visits, and carried her portfolio in a folder her daughter had decorated with stickers. Her hands shook as she explained her vision, but her voice grew stronger as she shared stories of her existing clients, the elderly and disabled individuals who had come to depend on her services. When the approval letter arrived 2 weeks later, she cried. It wasn't a huge amount, just enough for proper equipment, supplies, and some basic marketing materials. But it felt like winning the lottery. That weekend, she took her children shopping for her business supplies. They helped her pick out a professional styling chair that could fold for transport, quality scissors, and a proper kit of styling products. Her son insisted on carrying the receipt, carefully folded in his pocket like a precious treasure. The shelter's business center helped her create business cards and set up a basic website. She chose a simple design with soft colors and easy-to-read text. When the first box of cards arrived, her daughter insisted on keeping one to show her teacher. "My mom's a business owner now," she proudly told anyone who would listen. As her client list grew, she developed a routine. Mornings were for school drop-offs and administrative work in the shelter's computer lab. Afternoons were filled with client visits, retirement homes, assisted living facilities, and private residences. She kept detailed records of every appointment, every dollar earned, carefully building toward her goal of stable housing. The shelter's support group became her sounding board. Other women there, each fighting their own battles, offered suggestions and encouragement. One woman, who worked at a medical supply store, connected her with several clients who used wheelchairs. Another, who had accounting experience, helped her set up a simple bookkeeping system. These small acts of kindness from others who understood her struggle meant everything. Living in a car with 2 children wasn't something they taught you how to handle in school. Every morning brought new challenges, like finding a safe place to brush teeth or keeping school clothes wrinkle-free in the cramped backseat. The old sedan, which she once complained about for its rattling air conditioning, had become their entire world. She worked morning shifts at a local fast food restaurant and evening shifts cleaning offices. The hours between jobs were spent helping her kids with homework in the public library, where they could use the bathroom and enjoy the air conditioning. Her daughter would spread her math worksheets across the wooden tables, while her son practiced reading in the children's corner, surrounded by colorful book displays. The library became their sanctuary. During quiet afternoons, while her children were absorbed in books, she found herself drawn to the computers in the back. Her fingers would hover over the keyboard as she thought about her previous life as a hairstylist. She had always been good at it, not just the cutting and styling, but connecting with people, making them feel better about themselves. One day, while washing her hands in a gas station bathroom, she overheard 2 elderly women talking about how they couldn't find anyone to do their hair anymore. One had trouble walking and the other couldn't drive. The conversation stuck with her, playing over and over in her mind during her night shift as she emptied office trash cans. That's when the idea first sparked. What if she could bring hair services to people who couldn't get to a salon? She knew there were many elderly and disabled people who struggled with this issue. She had seen it firsthand at the nursing home where her grandmother once lived. The more she thought about it, the more possibilities she saw. During lunch breaks, she started researching on the library computers. She learned about mobile businesses, licensing requirements, and basic business plans. She took notes on the back of her children's old homework papers, filling the margins with calculations and ideas. The numbers were daunting, but something about this dream felt different from all her other desperate plans. She kept her supplies in the trunk, a few good scissors, combs, and basic styling products she'd managed to save from her salon days. After her evening shift, she would practice on herself using the car's rearview mirror, trying to keep her skills sharp. Her kids would watch from the backseat, making suggestions and occasionally volunteering to be her test subjects. The turning point came when she overheard a conversation at her cleaning job. One of the office workers was complaining about her mother in assisted living who hadn't had a proper haircut in months. Without thinking, she spoke up, offering her services. The woman was hesitant at first, but desperation won out. They arranged to meet that weekend. She spent hours preparing for that first client, pressing her only decent outfit using the library bathroom's hand dryer, making sure her own hair looked presentable. Her kids sat quietly in the car, coloring books in their laps, as she worked on the elderly woman's hair in her assisted living apartment. The cut wasn't perfect, the lighting was poor, and she had to make do with limited tools, but the smile on her client's face was genuine. Word spread quickly among the residents. Soon, she had 3 more appointments scheduled. Each client had a story. The former teacher who couldn't stand for long periods, the retired nurse with arthritis who couldn't drive anymore, the grandmother who missed her monthly salon visits with her daughters. She listened to their stories as she worked, and for those brief moments, she felt like she was doing more than just surviving. She kept careful track of every dollar earned, storing the money in an envelope tucked inside her daughter's stuffed rabbit for safekeeping. Every time she counted it, her children would gather around, making it feel like a family ritual. "How many more haircuts until we get a house?" her son would ask. She didn't have an answer, but for the first time in months, she had hope. At night, parked in their usual spot behind the grocery store, she would pull out her notebook and plan. The back pages were filled with dreams that felt more possible with each passing day. A proper kit of supplies, business cards, maybe even a website someday. Her daughter would sometimes draw pictures of their future salon, complete with rainbow-colored walls and a special chair for their old stuffed elephant that they'd had to leave behind. The morning sun peeked through the curtains of their small 2-bedroom apartment as she prepared breakfast for her kids. Life seemed normal then. The sound of cartoons from the living room TV, the smell of slightly burnt toast, and the usual rush to get everyone ready for school. She never imagined that in just a few months, this ordinary morning would become a precious memory. At 32, she had built what seemed like a stable life. A decent job at a local salon, a husband who worked in construction, and 2 beautiful children who filled their home with laughter and crayon drawings. Their apartment wasn't fancy, but it was home. The walls were decorated with family photos and her children's artwork, telling stories of birthday parties, first days of school, and weekend park visits. But life has a way of testing even the strongest foundations. It started with her daughter's unexplained fatigue and frequent fevers. What began as routine doctor visits quickly escalated into specialist appointments, medical tests, and eventually a diagnosis that would change everything. The medical bills started piling up, arriving in white envelopes that she began to dread opening. Then came the morning when her husband left for work and never returned. His goodbye had seemed ordinary, a quick kiss, the usual "see you later," but his phone was disconnected by evening. The next day, she discovered their joint account had been emptied. He had taken everything, leaving behind only a hastily written note saying he couldn't handle it anymore. The next few weeks became a blur of impossible choices. Should she buy groceries or pay the electricity bill? Should she fill her daughter's prescription or pay the rent? She picked up extra shifts at the salon, working until her feet ached and her hands were raw from chemicals. But it wasn't enough. The medical bills kept coming, and the rent kept falling behind. She tried everything: credit cards, payment plans, assistance programs. She sold their TV, then her wedding ring, then most of their furniture. Her children started noticing the changes. The kitchen cabinets grew emptier. The heat stayed off longer. Their mother's smile appeared less frequently, though she tried her best to hide her worry. The eviction notice came on a Tuesday, tucked between advertising flyers like it was just another piece of junk mail. She read it 5 times, standing in the hallway while her children's after-school cartoons played in the background. 3 days later, a second notice appeared, then a final warning. Each one felt like a physical blow. The night before they had to leave, she sat on the floor of their nearly empty apartment, surrounded by bags containing what remained of their life. Her children slept on blankets in the corner, unaware that tomorrow they would wake up to a completely different reality. She stayed awake all night, planning, worrying, and somehow still hoping. They loaded what they could fit into their old car: clothes, some toys, important documents, and a few cherished photos. The rest they left behind, including her daughter's favorite stuffed elephant that was too big to bring. The kids thought they were going on an adventure, but she could barely hold back tears as she handed over the keys to the apartment manager. That first night in the car, parked in a Walmart parking lot because she heard it was safe, she made up stories about camping to keep her children's spirits up. She transformed their situation into a game, pretending the car was a spaceship and they were explorers. But after they fell asleep, curled up in the backseat under blankets from their old home, she finally let herself cry. Yet even in that darkest moment, something inside her refused to be broken. As she watched her children sleep, their faces peaceful despite their circumstances, she made a silent promise. This wouldn't be their story's ending. It would be the beginning of something new. She didn't know how yet, but she would find a way to rebuild their lives stronger than before. The next morning, she woke up to her son's laughter as he pointed at a bird that had landed on their car's hood. Somehow, that simple moment of joy in the midst of their hardship gave her the first glimmer of hope. They might have lost their home, but they still had each other, and maybe that was enough to start over.